Hey everybody, what we're talking about today is how a U.S. citizen is a slave, okay? And so, let's get going. This is the first section of the 14th Amendment. All persons born or naturalized in the United States are subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. And see my video, the so-called 14th Amendment's unconstitutional, and that will talk about how it's unconstitutional, and my video on the U.S. citizens are enemies of the state. This is taken from Congressional Record, June 13, 1967, page 15,641 through 15,646. A citizen of the United States is a civilly dead entity operating as co-trustee and co-beneficiary of the public charitable trust, the constructive cesticate trust of U.S. Inc. under the 14th Amendment, which upholds the debt of the USA and USA Inc. And so no brain-dead idiots decide to send me an email and say they can't find that site. That's in 5 pages of the Congressional Record, and there's probably 5,000 words in those 5 pages. So it's a summary. Every taxpayer is assessed a trust having sufficient interest in the preventing abuse of the trust to be recognized in the field of this court's prerogative jurisdiction. And so a taxpayer is assessed a trust. Everyone. Okay? And this is United States of America versus Slater. Okay, 1982. Slater's protestations to the effect that he derives no benefit from the United States government have no bearing on his legal obligation to pay income taxes. Unless the defendant can establish that he's not a citizen of the United States, the IRS possesses authority to attempt to determine his federal tax liability. And so, U.S. citizens are taxpayers. And that means they're a slave. Okay? Think about it. For, all these people out there that... anyways, I'm not going to go into it. This is the D.C. Code. The legal estate to be assessed to use. Okay, Chapter 56, Section 1617 at 31 Stat 1432. Look it up if you have any doubt about it. This is the D.C. Code at 31 Stat 1189, and in section paragraph 2 it says that be it further enacted, the interpretation and construction of said code, the following rules shall be observed, namely, the word person shall be held and to apply to partnerships and corporations. Okay, so again, it's a fictitious entity. This is DC Code 31 Stat 1189. Actually, this is 31 Stat 1208 at Section 117. And they're talking about Chapter 1, laws remaining in force, Subchapter 3, Supreme Court. In addition to the jurisdiction conferred in the preceding section, plenary jurisdiction is hereby given to said court holding the said special term to hear and determine all questions. So, plenary is military dictatorship, people. And this is the D.C. Code, which is Chapter 3, absence for 7 years, Section 252 and 253, which is located at 31 Stat 1230. And... so at Section 252, presumption of death, if any person shall leave his domicile without any known intention of changing the same, and shall not return or be heard from for 7 years from the time of his so leaving, he shall be presumed to be dead. In any case where his death shall come in question, unless proof be made that he is alive within that time. And then if he's found living, the person presumed to be dead be found to have been living. Any person injured by such presumption shall be restored to the rights which he shall have been deprived by reason of such presumption. So the point being is that they presume you're dead. Okay, that's where the Cesticate Trust comes in. This is Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, Volume 2, under the definition of mort main. Yet still it was found difficult to set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity, for when they were driven out of all their former holes, they devised a new method of conveyance, by which the lands were granted not to themselves directly, but to nominal fiefs to the use of the religious houses, thus distinguishing between the possession and the use, and receiving the actual profits, while the season of the land remained in the nominal fiafi, who was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy, to be bound in conscience to account or tax to his sestike use for the rents and emoluments of the estate. And it is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. And so this says all sorts of things. First of all, if the Roman cult created the sestike trust, which it says there, that's what they did, and if the U.S. citizen is a sestike trust, which we just went over, then the Roman cult owns the U.S. citizen. And if the legal estate in the United States is the sestike trust, which we just went over, then the Roman cult owns the United States. And the Roman cult runs the so-called courts, it just said it did, and wants to account or tax the rents and emoluments of their fraudulently created sestike trust. That's what it says. This is DC Code under Chapter 15, Condemnation of Land for Public Use, in Section 485. Remember, all of the estates are in sestike trust, right? Sestike and sestike use or sestike trust, the same thing, synonymous basically. Usufruct is a type of a trust. As Section 485 at 31 Stat 1265, where it says citation to owners, okay, so they operate by way of citation. That's the point I want to make here, okay? Marshal fees for the service of any citation, summons, or capitis, okay? And if you watch my videos about Texas, that's all they do is capiuses. A citation is a summons to appear applied particularly to process in spiritual court. The ecclesiastical courts proceed according to the course of the civil and canon laws by citation and libel. Okay, it's all admiralty. A person is not normally to be cited to appear out of the diocese. Every archbishop may cite any person, and it goes on, where persons are cited out of their diocese, and it goes on, if they're cited, they do not appear, they're to be excommunicated. Whoa, make my day, BAAL priests. And if any person is cited out of the diocese, okay, this is Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 1. Oh, look at this, some more stuff about citations. A summons to appear applied particularly in a process in spiritual court. The ecclesiastical courts proceed according to the course of civil and canon laws by citation and libel. And then it goes on in Black's Law Dictionary, 2nd edition. Page 202, citations, also the name of process used in English ecclesiastical, probate, and divorce courts to call a defendant or respondent before them. And they're citing Blackstone's commentaries and Stephen's commentaries. A tax is an impost, a tribute on the subject, an excise tallage. In public law, taxation signifies a system for raising money for public purposes by compelling the payment by individuals of sums of money called taxes. Extortion, theft is what it is. Some general principles of theft have been said to be the subjects of every state ought to contribute to the support of the government as nearly as possible in proportion to their respective abilities, that is, in proportion to the revenue which they respectively enjoy. Revenue, corporate profits, under the protection of the Vatican, of the Roman cult, in the observation or neglect of this maxim consists of what is called equality or inequality of taxation. And that's Smith on the Wealth of Nations. And that's the Dictionary of English Law, Sweet and Maxwell, London, 1959. Okay, so the point being is a tax is a tribute, and it's the subjects, okay? So the subjects pay the tax. Well, think about it, people. If you have to pay a tax, then they're forcing you to work for nothing, okay? Gee, that sounds like slavery. The Declaration of Independence. He's combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution, unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefit of trial by jury. That's the Declaration of Independence, 1776. And this is an act to impose taxes in commerce only. George III, Chapter 12, 1778, only 2 years after the Declaration of Independence. Whereas taxation by the Parliament for the purpose of raising a revenue has been found to experience by experience to occasion great uneasiness and disorders. No shit, Batman! That from and after the passing of this act, the King and Parliament, that the thieves will not impose any duty, tax, or assessment, whatever payable in the pigs, colonies, provinces, or plantations in North America, except such duties as may be expedient to impose for the regulation of commerce. All statutes are only for government property, okay, subjects, okay, government property is subjects, okay, and this is actually a Canadian case, but it's the Privy Council in England that's making this statement. And it's reference Re-Employment and Social Insurance Act, 1935. In other words, Dominion legislation, even though it deals with Dominion property, okay? So their legislation only deals with their property. And very similar stuff in the U.S. The Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States. That's U.S. Constitution, Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2. Okay? If you're property, you are slavery. You are a slave. Okay? If you are property, you are a slave. If you read any of the antebellum cases involving slavery, and for those who don't know what antebellum means, it means prior to the Civil War. The debate was always over property rights. The taxing power, being its nature unlimited over the subjects within its control, would enable the state governments to destroy the above-mentioned rights. That's Crandall versus Nevada, U.S. Supreme Court, 73 U.S. 35, 1867. If they can take a penny, they can take it all. They can take everything. Any tax is slavery. They're forcing you to work for nothing. All subjects over which the sovereign power of the state extends are objects of taxation, but those over which it does not extend are exempt from taxation. This proposition may be pronounced as self-evident. It's obvious. The sovereignty of the state extends to everything which exists by its authority or permission. And that's McCullough versus Maryland, 1819. For the very idea that one may be compelled to hold his life or the means of living or any material right essential to the enjoyment of life at the mere will of another seems to be intolerable in any free country where freedom prevails as being the essence of slavery itself. And that's U.S. Supreme Court again, Yickwo versus Hopkins. Well, this is not a free country for most of you slaves out there, okay? Most of you people, your U.S. citizens slaves, are slaves, okay? It's not a free country. You're a slave. You're a piece of property, and they can damn well do anything they damn well feel like doing. The privileges and immunities of citizens of the United States do not necessarily include all the rights protected by the first 8 amendments to the federal Constitution against the powers of the federal government. That's the U.S. Supreme Court. The only absolute and unqualified right of a U.S. citizen is to residence within the territorial boundaries of the United States. A U.S. citizen is a slave. Okay? This is all coming from the Roman cult. Civil rights under the 14th Amendment are for federal citizens and not state citizens. Federal citizens, as parents, have no right to the custody of their infant children except subject to the paramount right of the state. So federal citizens are U.S. citizens. They're slaves. It's all the Roman cult. You don't have any rights. You're a piece of property, slave. Capitis diminutio, meaning the diminishing of status through the use of capitalization. In Roman law, abridgment of personality or loss or curtailment of a man's status or aggregate of legal attributes and qualifications. Capitis diminutio maxima, meaning a maximum loss of status through the use of capitalization. The highest and most comprehensive loss of status. This occurred when a man's condition was changed from one of freedom to one of bondage. When he became a slave. Why do you think they're spelling your name in all block capital letters, idiot? That's Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. Sestake trust equals Roman cult equals slave. This is Roman law. It's all coming from the Roman cult. To take an instant, when a person has given himself an adoption or a woman has passed under manus, all their property and corporal and all that is due to them is acquired by the adopting father or the coiptionator, except those things which perish by capitis diminutio, of which kind are usufruct and obligation to services on part of a freeman contracted by oath, and matters enforceable by a statutable action. That's taken from the commentaries of Gaius and the Rules of Ulpian, translated with notes in 1874. Okay, that was originally written in like 350 AD in the Roman Empire. This is Roman law. Classification of persons. The Roman law distinguished three kinds of personal status or degree of legal capacity and classified human beings with respect thereto as follows. And we don't talk about that here, but I wanted to point out that this Law of Persons, written by Joseph R. Long, is talking about Roman law. Okay, the Law of Persons is Roman law. And then in section 3, it says Capitis diminutio maxima. A Roman citizen cannot legally be sold in slavery, but he might become a slave by condemnation for crime or by being captured by an enemy, okay? These Satanist pigs are your enemy. They're making war on you. Capitis diminutio. This is Roman cult civil law. Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition, page 629. Capitis diminutio is the destruction of the caput or legal personality. Capitis diminutio, so to speak, wipes out the formal individual and puts a new one in his place, and between the old and new individual there is, legally speaking, nothing in common. A juristic personality may be thus destroyed in one of three ways: by loss of status libertatis. This is Capitis diminutio maxima. Number 2, by loss of status civitatis, which is Capitis diminutio media, and by loss of severance from the agnatic family. This entails Capitis diminutio minima, and that's cited from Rudolf Sohm, The Institutes, a textbook of the history and system of Roman private law. And the point being is that status is everything, okay? Status is everything. Slavery is a status under Roman civil law. Capitis diminutio maxima, the diminution of a person's legal status as a result of being reduced to slavery. Okay? Status, standing, condition, situation, compare a state. A corporation has status as a citizen, let me say that again. A corporation has no status as a citizen outside the jurisdiction where it was created. And that's Anderson's Law Dictionary, 1889 edition. So, think about that. A corporation is a citizen, and therefore a citizen is a corporation. And if they're assaulting you as a Sestake trust, a U.S. citizen slave, then you're in the United States, okay? You're not in Texas, you're not in Arizona, you're not in New Mexico, you're not in New York, you're in the United States. You're in that 10 square miles District of Columbia. This is an act to enact a uniform commercial code for the District of Columbia and for other purposes, located at 77 Stat 630, Public Law 88-243, and in section 9.307, paragraph H, it says United States is located in the District of Columbia. Okay? So when they say District of Columbia, they mean United States. Again, status. A person's legal condition, whether personal or proprietary, the sum of total of a person's legal rights, duties, liabilities, and other legal relations of any particular group of them separately considered. Status of a landowner, a person's legal condition regarding personal rights but excluding proprietary relations. The status of a father, the status of a wife, a person's capacities and incapacities as opposed to other elements of personal status, a person's legal condition insofar as it is imposed by the law without the person's consent as opposed to a condition that the person has acquired by agreement, and that's the status of a slave. By the status or standing of a person is meant the position that he holds in reference to the rights which are recognized and maintained by law. In other words, his capacity for the exercise and enjoyment of legal rights. And that's by James Hadley, Introduction to Roman Law, 1881, and that's taken in Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition, page 4417. The law of status, the category of law dealing with personal and non-proprietary rights, whether in rem or in personam, is one of three departments in which the civil law, and that's these BAAL priests, assault you with their civil law, which is Roman law. That's Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. Law of persons, the law relating to persons, the law that pertains to different statuses of persons. This is commonly known as jus personarum, a shortened term of jus quod or personas, the law that pertains to persons. Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. Okay, so the law of persons is divided into three parts. Anyways, with Roman civil law, status is everything. There is no real justice. Justice is for sale, depending on who you are. That's the status. That's where the status comes in. And it deals with statutes and corporations. With common law, status is nothing. It doesn't matter who you are. Everybody's treated the same. These Roman cult Satanist BAAL priests assault you with their Roman law. People versus De La 40 California Reports, page 311 at page 342, 1870. It is evident that they are not have not the political rights which are vested in citizens of the states. They are not constituents of any community in which is vested with any sovereign power of government. Their position partakes more of the character of subjects than of citizens. They are subject to the laws of the United States or Canada or whatever, but have no voice in its management. If they are allowed to make laws, the validity of these laws is derived from the sanction of a government in which they are not represented. Mere citizenship they may have, but the political rights of citizens they cannot enjoy. And so, again, this is why they can rig elections, okay? Because remember, when you go and register to vote, you swear under penalty of perjury, you're one of the slaves. The term citizen, United States, is analogous to the term subject in the common law. That means a slave. U.S. citizens can murder their unborn children. I guess it depends on whether you consider that a privilege or a right or a liability. My attitude is that it's a liability. The unborn are not included in the definition of person as used in the 14th Amendment, so they can murder their unborn children. And while the 14th Amendment does not create national citizenship, it has the effect of making that citizenship paramount and dominant instead of derivative and dependent upon state citizenship. And that's U.S. Supreme Court, Colgate versus Harvey. So they went and converted U.S. citizenship into the opposite. Matter of fact, the next site even says it. The amendment reversed and annulled the original policy of the Constitution. How do you spell treason? Citizenship is a political status and may be defined and privilege limited by Congress. The term resident and citizen of the United States is distinguished from a citizen of one of the several states in that the former is a special class of citizen created by Congress. Therefore, U.S. citizens residing in one of the states of the Union are classified as property. Okay, that sounds like a slave. And franchises of the federal government as an individual entity. A U.S. citizen, upon leaving the District of Columbia, becomes involved in interstate commerce as a resident, does not have common law right to travel of a citizen of one of the several states. Residents. Residents, as distinguished from citizens, are aliens who are permitted to take up a permanent abode in the country. Being bound to the society by reason of their dwelling in it, they are subject to its laws so long as they remain there, and being protected by it, they must defend it, although they do not enjoy all the rights of citizens. They have only certain privileges which the law or custom gives them. Permanent residents are those which have been given a right of perpetual residence. They are a sort of citizen of a less privileged character and are subject to the society without enjoying all of its advantages. Their children succeed to their status where the right of perpetual residence given them by the state passes to their children. That's The Law of Nations by Vattel, Book 1, Chapter 19, Section 213, page 87. So, That's residence, and one does not necessarily become a non-resident by absconding or absenting himself from his place of abode. Well, for all of those people out there that have trouble figuring out what this is saying, what they're saying is that it all depends on what you tell them. Residence is a noun, the fact of being officially present, the statutory presence of the incumbent in a benefice. And that's Funk and Wagnall's dictionary. That's pretty well, you'll find that in any dictionary nowadays. It might be correctly said there's no such thing as a citizen of the United States. A citizen in any one of the states of the Union is held to be called a citizen of the United States, although technically and abstractly there is no such thing. At the Revolution, the sovereignty devolved on the people, and they are truly the sovereigns of the country, but they are sovereigns without the subjects, unless the African slaves among us may be so called. So the point I want to make here is that subjects are slaves. Okay? That's the point. I don't particularly like the race issue, but I wanted to bring up the fact that subjects are slaves. And this is West versus Louisiana, U.S. Supreme Court. The right of trial by jury in civil cases guaranteed by the 7th Amendment and the right to bear arms guaranteed by the 2nd Amendment have been distinctly held not to be privileges and immunities as citizens of the United States guaranteed by the 14th Amendment against abridgment by the states. And in the same effect, in effect, the same decision was made in respect to the guarantee against prosecution, except by indictment of a grand jury contained in the 5th Amendment, and in respect to the right to be confronted with witnesses contained in the 6th Amendment. U.S. citizens are slaves. You don't have any rights. Get used to it. Get over it. The technical niceties of the common law are not regarded. A jury does not figure ordinarily in the trial of an admiralty suit. The verdict of the jury merely advisory and may be disregarded by the court. The rules of practice may be altered when found to be inconvenient or likely to embarrass the business of the court. Yeah, we want to railroad this guy, so let's just throw the rules out. A court of admiralty acts upon equitable principles. That sounds like the Roman cult there. A libel of information does not require all the technical precision of an indictment at common law. If the allegations describe the offense, it is all that is necessary, and if it is founded upon a statute, it is sufficient if it pursues the words of the law. We therefore decline to overrule the opinion of Chief Justice Marshall. We hold that the District of Columbia is not a state within Article 3 of the Constitution. In other words, cases between citizens of the district and those of the states were not included in the catalog of controversies over which Congress could give jurisdiction to the federal courts by virtue of Article 3. In other words, Congress has exclusive legislative jurisdiction over citizens of Washington District of Columbia, and through their plenary power, nationally covers those citizens even when in one of the several states, as though the district expands for the purpose of regulating its citizens wherever they go throughout the states of the Union. And that's National Mutual Insurance Company of the District of Columbia versus Tidewater Transfer Company, U.S. Supreme Court, 1948. Oh, and they're talking about citizens of the Washington District of Columbia. Well, remember where I said in the Uniform Commercial Code it says that that United States is in the District of Columbia. Okay, so that's what it's talking about, is U.S. citizens. International law rule adopted for areas under federal legislative jurisdiction. Federalizes state civil law, including common law. The rule serves to federalize not only statutory, but the common law of the state. Federal and state venue discussed. The civil law is effective in an area of exclusive federal jurisdiction or federal law, notwithstanding their derivation from state laws, and the cause arising under such laws may be brought in or removed to a federal district court. Under sections 1331 and 1441 of the U.S. Title 28 United States Code, giving jurisdiction to such courts and civil actions arising under laws of the United States. Okay, so all state laws are federal laws. And that's found in Jurisdiction Over Federal Areas Within the States, Report of Interdepartmental Committee for the Study of Jurisdiction Over Federal Areas Within the States, Part 2, a text of the Law of Legislative Jurisdiction submitted to the Attorney General and transmitted to the President, June 1957. So, federal citizens, it exists in Canada too. The charter adopted in 1982 refers to citizens of Canada several times. The courts have told us the laws of Canada are federal laws. Citizens of Canada are federal citizens. Canadians also include state citizens and federal citizens. Federal citizens of Canada and the Charter of Rights and Freedom. It talks about citizens of Canada all over the place. Every citizen of Canada has a right to vote in all election and an election of members of the House of Commons and Legislative Assembly to be qualified for membership. Notwithstanding anything in this charter, the rights and freedoms referred to are guaranteed equally to male and female persons. Gee, that sounds like Roman cult. All statutes are only for government property. In other words, Dominion legislation, even though it deals with Dominion property, that's a Canadian court case, and that's what they're talking about there. We already saw that once. So there have always been two classes of citizens. The citizens of each state shall be entitled to the privileged immunities of citizens in the several states. That's U.S. Constitution, Article 4, Section 2, Clause 1. That's the citizens in each state. That's state citizens, and citizens in the several states is U.S. citizens. But the stranger that dwelleth among you shall be unto you as one born among you. Thou shalt love him as thyself. You were strangers in the land of Egypt. And I love you, therefore, the stranger, through your strangers in the land of Egypt. Deuteronomy 10 and 19 and Leviticus 19:34. The point being is that that's how they enslaved the children of Israel. And all the brain-dead idiots out there letting it happen here. Okay, all you brain-dead idiots, all you sheeple, you're going to all go to hell, too. The rights of sovereignty extend to all persons and things not privileged that are within the territory. They extend to all strangers resident therein, not only to those who are naturalized and to those who are domiciled therein, having taken up their abode with the intention of permanent residence, but also to those whose residence is transitory. All strangers are under the protection of the sovereign while they're within his territory and owe temporary allegiance in return for that protection. And that's U.S. Supreme Court. Talking about two classes of citizens. Strangers have a social security number, a social insurance number. Thou shalt not lend upon usury to thy brother, usury of money, usury of victuals, usury of anything that is lent upon usury. To a stranger thou mayest lend upon usury. That's Deuteronomy 23:19 and 20. The bankster thieves will not loan their so-called money unless you can prove you're one of their strangers, which is giving them a number. In doing this, I shall have occasion incidentally to evince how true it is that states and governments were made for man, and at the same time how true it is that his creatures and servants at first deceived, next vilified, and at last oppressed their master and maker. Let a state be considered as subordinate to the people, and everything else be subordinate to the state. If a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. If tyranny and oppression come to this land, it will be in the guise of fighting a foreign enemy, okay? Gee, that sounds like the fictitious war on terror that the Satanists and the White House is doing. The business of journalists is to destroy the truth, to lie outright, to pervert, to vilify, to fawn at the feet of mammon, to sell his country and his race for his daily bread. You know it, and I know it, and what folly is this toasting an independent press? We are the tools and vassals of rich men behind the scenes. We are the jumping jacks. They pull the strings and we dance. Our talents, our possibilities, and our lives are all the property of other men. We are intellectual prostitutes. And that's John Swinton, former chief of staff, New York Times. Gee, that sounds like what's going on today with all the Satanist news media. If a man be found stealing in of his brethren of the children of Israel, make merchandise of him or selleth him, then that thief shall die. Thou shalt put evil away from among you. And through covetousness shall they with feigned words make merchandise of you, whose judgment now of a long time lingereth not, and damnation slumbereth not. Ye are the father of the devil, and the lusts of your father will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he's a liar and the father of it. These people are all Satanists. That all comes from the Roman cult, which is the center of Satanism on this planet. And the sooner we put a stop to that, the better. But the fearful and unbelieving and abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. So all you cowards out there that don't want to say anything, you're going to go to hell. All you idiots out there that are too stupid to figure this out, you're going to go to hell. By which he also went and preached to the spirits in prison. Okay? That's hell. Spirit prison. It shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall punish the host of the high ones that are on high, and the kings of the earth upon the earth, and they shall be gathered together as prisoners are gathered in the pit, and shall be shut up in prison, and after many days shall they be visited. It behooves every man who values liberty of conscience for himself to resist invasions of it in the case of others, or their case may, by change of circumstances, become his own. If ye love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude better than the animating contest of freedom, go home from us in peace. We ask not your counsel or arms. Crouch down and lick the hands which feed you. May your chains set lightly upon you, and may our posterity forget that you were ever our countrymen. And that's Samuel Adams. Nobody could say it better than Samuel Adams. When shall it be said in any country of the world, my poor are happy, neither ignorance or distress is to be found among them. My jails are empty of prisoners, my streets of beggars, the aged are not in want, the tax is not oppressive, the rational world is my friend, because I am friend of its happiness. When these things can be said, then may that country boast of its constitution and government. Well, we have nothing to boast about here. We have a bunch of Satanists that have seized control of the government. We have a bunch of Satanist order followers running around populating the prisons. The taxes are oppressive. These code enforcers, Satanists, are everywhere. But if a watchman see the sword come and blow not the trumpet, and the people be not warned of the sword come and take any person from among them, he's taken away in his iniquity, but his blood will I require at the watchman's hands. This is my effort to make sure that I'm blameless on Judgment Day. And I hope you're blameless too. I guess we'll see. Either you're part of the problem or you're part of the solution. You're now a watchman. Circulate this video far and wide. I got over 230 videos. These are some of them. I'm not even going to go read through the list. You can see it. If you want to read them, pause it. Copies of these documents can be found in my private group at Yahoo called Administrating Your Public Servants. I have YouTube videos that are videos of private information shares that show these and other court citations that are available for a donation. This last paragraph is for all the Satanist order followers operating in their private capacity. Donations, and so the point being is that you can put your privileges and benefits up your rectal orifice. Donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept IOUs, Federal Reserve notes, PayPal gifts, checks, money orders, etc. Send me an email for particulars. If you find this useful, you need to pay it forward. If you don't know what pay it forward means, then watch the movie. And send me your success stories. I'd like to put them in my blog. My blog is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email is engineerwin@yahoo. My YouTube profile is Sovereign Living. My Facebook community page is deleted because of censorship on the part of Facebook. And my private group, Sovereignty International, is being deleted. I have a YouTube video that explains how you can hurt Facebook. My Yahoo private group is called Administrating Your Public Servants. My Google private group is called Administrating Your Public Servants. I appreciate you taking the time to watch the video. I hope you got something out of it. I hope that you're not a U.S. citizen, or you do what you can to shed that Roman cult status. You know, I mean, we all have to do what we have to do, don't we? But Judgment Day's coming too. And thanks for watching, and have a real nice day.